Hello and welcome everyone to NCL 101. This is your quick intro video for the season. Especially if you're a beginner, this is a good way for you to learn the top level of everything to expect for NCL and how you can prepare. I am Franz. I'm the CEO of Skyline. We power the National Cyber League. And today I'm going to be going over some tips and tricks and overview of the season. And then after that, I'm going to bring on two members of our team, Kiwi and Jen, who are going to join me as we help answer all of your questions in the chat. I'm seeing people here from, where do we have people? We have Washington State, Oregon. We mainly just have West Coast people. Where is everyone from? New Jersey, Georgia, Alabama. All right, there we go. People from all over the country. So you can ask questions in the chat. I'm going to go over for about 5 minutes, just these slides to give everyone the expectations for what you'll see in the NCL season. And then we'll go back in circle to the questions once we get through the slides. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So we're going to go over the timeline, different categories of NCL, what the scouting report is, provide you some existing resources and some reminders and tips for first-time players, and then our Q&A and open chat. Oh, I think I have, this might be the wrong dates for this season here. Let me pull up the updated dates. All right, I have them wrong on this screen, so I will just read them out from the website, and then we'll go into the next slide here. So the spring season dates, we have the gym open right now. It is from January 26th to May 22nd. So all throughout the entire season, you can go through the gym and you can practice. That's where you'll have guided tutorials. We have videos of some of them, and you can follow along with those to get your hands-on experience with the challenges. One thing that I highly recommend with people when you go through the gym, keep in mind that the gym is not meant to be kind of a one-to-one of exactly what you'll have in the competition. It's meant to kind of give you a taste of the types of skills and critical thinking that you'll need to succeed when you go through the competition. So spend less time focused on the particular skills and topics and tools in the gym, and more with the overall strategies for problem solving. Cybersecurity is always a rapidly evolving field. And so what you learn today and the tools you could use today are not going to be the same tools that you use tomorrow. So the much more important skill to develop is less familiarity with a particular tool or particular topic, but the general problem solving ability that will be applicable, whatever the next threat is that comes out. So that's always important to know about with the gym content. We also have the practice game that will be March 30th through April 5th. The practice game is going to cover, it's going to comprise of old challenges from previous NCL seasons. And it is going to give you the experience of going through the competition without the guides. So it's exactly what you would expect for like a PSAT. You don't have kind of the guides to solve everything, but it's going to give you practical experience for the game. Following that, we have the individual game April 10th through the 12th. That's going to be over the weekend. Compete as an individual. That's the big thing that we remind everyone is that in the individual game competition, it's meant to showcase your individual abilities. You do have an opportunity to work with your friends and your classmates, but that comes in the team game later, April 24th through 26th. That's when you can compete in teams of up to 7. Now, for both individual and team game, they both span over the course of the weekend. They both also cover all the same topics that I have here on the screen. So you're going to have a different set of challenges for the individual and the team game, but they will cover the same categories that we have here. Kind of going through those categories quickly, we got open source intelligence, cryptography, password cracking, log analysis, scanning, enumeration exploitation, network traffic analysis, forensics, and web application security. So you can see that we're covering a range of both offensive, defensive, and those like forensic skills. So the gamut of what you would expect within the industry. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you go through the challenges within NCL, you can go through them in any order. You don't have to go through the topics in the order that they're presented. You can completely skip a topic if you want to and focus on ones that you're interested in. We have a lot of people who do NCL with a lot of different backgrounds. Some people are more focused on offensive skills. Some are more focused on defensive skills. We have kind of a big sandbox for everyone. And so you can kind of tailor it to what your interests are. You don't have to do everything. That's kind of left up to your personal decision. All right. Next up are the scouting reports. So this is going to be the culmination of all of your hard work as you're competing in the games. You'll get the scouting report, which will showcase your skills from going through the challenges. And so these become very valuable because they show your strengths and weaknesses. If you're still in school and you're still developing your skills, it shows you what areas you might want to focus on. You can tailor that to your interests and what careers you might want. So it also these reports also highlight the different types of jobs that you might find here. You can see the top nice work roles. You can kind of look and see if you're looking for those types of jobs, what types of skills do you need and how are you doing with those? Or the reverse, you might find that I'm really good in these types of skills. What types of careers might be out there for me? Another really important thing that the scouting report helps you with is that when you go apply for jobs and you go to the interview phase, the employer is always going to be asking, what do you know about, log analysis or using a SOC tool. And you can actually talk about your NCL experience in that interview to demonstrate your capabilities. And the descriptions that we put in the scouting reports here are meant to kind of help you guide that conversation. How do you talk about the skills that you've performed in a way that the recruiters and the hiring manager are going to be able to understand? That's really the huge value of the scouting report, is as a tool to help you prepare for the interview process. And then some resources to help you prepare here. I mentioned the gym already. Those are the past challenges. We also have webinars, just like we have here with this NCL 101. We do a couple webinars per season. We actually just did one yesterday. You can go and watch the recording of that on StreamYard or on YouTube. And we'll have a couple more throughout the season. So that's a great way for you to familiarize with different topics that we're going to cover during the season. And of course, we also have the Trove. These are just our written guides. You'll see these embedded directly within the gym, but you can go to the Trove website directly and look through all the different guides, tutorials in one kind of aggregated spot. If you just want to read through things and not necessarily have to click through all the different challenges to access them, that's another option as well. And I really want to leave the slides pretty short here before we go to the Q&A. And so the final things I'll kind of leave before we go to the Q&A are the tips and tricks here. So as a beginner, make sure that you focus on setting your own personal goals. I've seen a lot of people get very stressed out because they'll look at the top of the leaderboard and they'll see these people who are scoring much higher than they are. And you really have to think about this as the fact that it is an open competition. It's not a standardized exam. It's not expected that everyone's going to be getting an 80% or a 90%. In fact, on average, the score within NCL is a 33% because most people are coming in as beginners. And so you're not going to know every single thing. So focus on setting your own personal goals. If you are interested in a specific category, maybe set yourself a benchmark of like, hey, I want to answer, one question in like easy, medium, and hard for this category. Maybe you want to be able to beat your personal goal from last season. It's much better to set your own personal goals because how someone else is doing has no bearing on your own path, and everyone is coming at this from a different stage in their learning career. You have people who are have already been working in the industry. They're coming back to get a degree, and those people are also in the mix as college freshmen, seeing this, taking their first cybersecurity course. And so it's really important to set your own personal goals so that you have a good benchmark for your own success. Next, focus on scoring points. We see a lot of people kind of get very fixated on the ranking rather than just the points. And we do have accuracy as the tiebreaker if there is a tie on points. However, for like the vast majority of situations, unless you're kind of going to be in the top, 10, 20 on the leaderboard, it's much more important to get points than to take a hit for accuracy. And so rather than stressing out on like, the exact accuracy that you have, it might be better to make educated guesses, because if you don't make an answer submission because you're afraid of getting something wrong, you just won't get the points for that question, versus you making, maybe 2 or 3 educated guesses and then finally getting those points. And that will kind of actually progress you further in the ranking than being paralyzed, not being able to make an answer submission because you're too afraid about, being wrong and having that harm your accuracy. So it's very much recommended as a beginner, make those educated guesses. The accuracy as the tiebreaker for ranking typically doesn't come into play unless you're at the very top of the leaderboard. Next thing here, take good notes. I think a lot of times it's easy to kind of get sucked in and try to just like make a beeline for getting all the answers. But really the purpose of NCL is to help you develop new skills and to help you learn. Oftentimes I say that if you've learned something from your experience, then you've succeeded in the competition. You've won the competition. And so taking notes can be very helpful for you to reflect after the games and kind of say, okay, these are the new things that I've learned. Maybe these are ways that I can put those into practice. The notes will help you there. And the final tip here is to remember to take breaks. We've seen a lot of people pull all-nighters and kind of forget a lot of basic human needs. So make sure that you get plenty of sleep, get food, take showers, drink some water. You need that balance. And oftentimes just having a little bit of a reset to help your brain out a little bit will help get you unstuck. So instead of being kind of banging your head against the wall for hours and hours on end, take a little bit of a break, get a little bit of reset, and that can oftentimes help you make more progress than just kind of brute forcing the challenge that way. So that was the slides here. Really what I want to do is go over all of your questions and see what you all have there. And then I will also right now bring up onto stage Jen and Kiwi from our engineering team. So hello.
Hi everyone.
Hi Jen, hi Kiwi. Do you mind if you each kind of give a quick intro on yourself and what you do at Cyber Skyline? I guess Jen, I added you to the screen first, so do you want to do your intro?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Jen. I'm one of the challenge developers here on our staff, but I used to be just like you, NCL player. I was a career changer and I was trying to figure out like, is cybersecurity for me? And I did a club at community college and yeah, now come full circle and I'm helping to build stuff for all of you. So really excited to answer your questions.
And I guess that brings you to me. Hi, I'm Kiwi. I am also one of the challenge developers at Cyber Skyline. You have me to thank for some of the weird and crazy challenges over the past couple of months. Things like the mainframe challenge and the hardware challenge. I like working in the weird niche area between software and hardware, and I have some experience in AI security.
All right, and we're gonna go through some of your questions. So keep asking them in the chat. We've got a little bit of a queue right now, and I'll put them up on screen. So first question: would experience with Linux administration and networking give an advantage in NCL challenges? Either of you want to take that one?
Maybe in some, but not all. Some of those, if one can get really crazy, we'll point, does some of that background apply there? Not to everything. Kiwi, anything to add?
Yeah, I think any experience in Linux, any experience in Linux administration, any experience in networking will give you an advantage in challenges like the scanning challenge or some of the E&E challenges. But I think any level of technical experience is going to give you an advantage here. So those two things specifically aren't going to bring you to the top. You're going to still need to bring some other skills.
I'll also add, we do have a network traffic analysis category. So I think maybe that networking experience will be pretty helpful in that category. And then with the Linux administration, a lot of command line tools are going to be helpful for when you solve a lot of these different challenges. So general command line knowledge, I think, from the Linux administration might be beneficial there. All right, next up, we have a question for how do employers typically view a low accuracy rating in the scouting report? I don't know if either of you have an opinion on that one or if you want me to take that one.
I have an opinion on that. I think having a perfect accuracy report actually detracts from what an employer might consider, because a high accuracy report shows that like lack of a struggle and lack of trying and maybe a little bit of perfectionism. I think I also don't know if accuracy really is pulled too heavily into ratings by employers. So Franz, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I would say that like typically I actually haven't heard of any employers like looking at the accuracy in particular. I think they're typically looking at the ranking. And another thing to know is that like employers are not going to get your scouting report like as is, right? So like we provide the players the scouting reports. You kind of choose when you're ready to give that to the employer. So the thing that I've seen a lot of people doing is like putting the highlights that they want on their resume, and then having a link to their scouting report, so their employer is seeing how the student, how the player wants to represent their performance, and then you've got the full link to the scouting report as kind of like the evidence of that. It's just kind of like if you get a certification, what you list on your resume is not like typically the score that you got on the exam for that certification. It's the fact that you have that certification. And then of course you can have the verification link that might show your specific score. But it's kind of in the control of you all for how you want to represent that. And while we're on that topic, one of the big things I would recommend, we have a lot of people playing NCL, and with how math works, there are only so many people who can be top 10, so many people that can be top 100, right? You might want to consider as well, practically speaking, of like putting percentile rating, right? So top 1%, top 10%, because with close to 10,000 people playing NCL per season, you could do pretty well. And if you just look at that like numeric ranking, it doesn't sound the best, but percentile might help you there with that. Next question. What skills do players who consistently score in the top 10% usually have that beginners should start developing now?
That's a really good question. The top 10% have definitely been doing the competitions for a couple of years. So, and I don't think they just do NCL. They do a number of other things. They also are really good at working in teams, is something that I've observed. There's not just one lone person pulling the weight. It's a bunch of people doing the work together. So I think those couple things I think would really round out why you're in the top 10%.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think less skills and more experience. I think a lot of players who are in the top 10% are getting the snowball rolling ahead of NCL. They're doing CTFs in between seasons. They're actually putting in effort, not just when a class dictates it. And that's how you'll see. That's how you see the most skilled players or the top players competing. They'll compete from a place of experience because they've done similar challenges before. They have experience with whatever category they're playing around with.
I guess I have one more thing to add, actually, because when I played in college, our team ranked in the top 15%. And kind of after the competition, we had a like, hey, I really want to learn how you did this. Like, those players are still interested after the game. Like, okay, what did I do wrong and how can I be better? And I think that creating those sort of systems, Franz mentioned like taking good notes. I think that is 1,000% something that some of our top players are doing.
Something I'd also add, I mentioned this a little bit when I was doing the slides, but like those critical thinking skills, I'll kind of elaborate more on that. Like really good skill is being able to find out new information very, very quickly and kind of like being able to filter out the noise. Because typically the people in the top 10% of NCL, they're having to solve challenges covering topics that they haven't learned about before. They're not covered in a class, they're practical in the real world. And so, you know, oftentimes, unless you're actually doing that type of work that that challenge is covering, you haven't been familiarized with that, which means that you'll have to Google around. You'll have to read documentation. And there's a lot of information out on the internet. And so being able to kind of digest everything quickly, figure out like what information do I need to grab, what stuff's irrelevant, you know, that becomes a very useful skill. Next question here.
Lots of good questions.
How long do challenges stay open after the competition so that we can go and do write-ups? So once the games end, you're not able to access the challenges at that point in time. And this actually goes back to like, you know, taking good notes. You can download everything, you know, and copy the questions and everything while the games are happening. And you could go back and do your write-ups that way. Another thing I will note, because we do kind of use the challenges from past seasons back in the practice game, and we want to keep that to be a thing that like is going to be new for people who haven't seen it before. We ask that people don't do public write-ups. It's totally fine if you have like your club write-ups or your school write-ups, your own personal portfolio. We just ask that you don't like publicize it, because as soon as, you know, you've got a challenge there where you can just Google the answer and get the answer out there, then it's not really like a fun challenge for people to solve anymore at that point in time for the practice game. So totally okay with you doing kind of write-ups for your own kind of personal and school use. Oh, we got a couple logistical questions. I think I'm just going to knock some of these out pretty quick. So is participation in the individual game required to participate in the team game? No, they are fully independent. You can choose to do one or the other or both. There is no bearing on the two. I will say though, if this is like, if you haven't already created a team for the team game, something to keep in mind is, especially on Discord where people are creating teams, people ask like, what's your individual game ranking when they make the teams? So if you haven't done the individual game, it might be hard for you to, you know, show people how well you do. But you know, if that's not something that you worry about, then you don't have to worry about it. Does the practice game have a big weight on the total scoring and placing? It does not affect it at all. The practice game is just for practice. You can choose to not do it at all, and it will not affect your ranking on the scouting report. So that's kind of up to you. Other logistical questions we have here. Are there certifications from playing NCL? So we do not directly issue certifications. However, we align the objectives in the game to certifications, primarily CompTIA. So a lot of people that we've seen play NCL are also going for the CompTIA certification, and they kind of say that NCL is a good way to get the practical application of the exam objectives. Like they actually get to do the hands-on, and that helps them learn, because the CompTIA exams are kind of knowledge-based rather than like practical. And so, you know, if you're someone who learns in a very tactile way, learning by doing, NCL is a good way to help you prepare for those certifications. We also do have good alignment as well with CEH and the ISC squared certifications. Does participation in NCL count for CEUs and CompTIA, etc.? It does. So at the end, when you get your scouting report, you will get a certain number of CEUs listed in there based on how many points you scored in each category. Are AI tools permitted at any point? Yes, you using AI tools is fair game. You just need to keep in mind that the overall rule for using tools within NCL is that it has to be freely available. So no kind of like special AI paid tools and stuff like that. You could use the free models. I know that ChatGPT and Claude both have free tiers. Like you can use the free trials of things, but we don't want someone coming and spending thousands of dollars to get a huge edge on everyone else. So as long as it's a free tool.
I also want to add to that. We are not responsible for AI hallucinations. If part of our code or part of our challenge makes your AI freak out at you, you should have read the thing that you're copying and pasting before you copied and pasted. Other than that, if you make a ticket saying, well, the AI says this, we are not very likely to take into consideration whatever the AI said. If you have sources backing up what the AI says, then we can talk. But please don't make a ticket saying, hey, the AI said that this is wrong and this is the actual answer, because AI hallucinations happen a dime a dozen.
And I think those are all the logistical questions now. Back to kind of more general questions about the competition. What do you think about when trying to balance realism and learning experience with making challenges?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question.
I mean, I think about real things that I've encountered in real life. There's one challenge I'm building right now, and the premise is I was in a hotel and there was an open XP computer in the middle of the hallway. Just logged in, and I was like, what would I find? What would I look for? And so I think there's a lot of realism and like real world experience that I try and bring in.
Yeah, generally when I'm making challenges, a lot of them tend to come from experience of like pen tests or engagements that I've done in the past. And then I try to filter out the noise. A lot of the times during a pen test or engagement, I encounter noise and like these small little headaches and these small little hiccups that take up hours, if not days of my time. And I try to like filter those out and just get to the core vulnerability and the core issue that I found. If we wanted to make things more realistic, it would just take a lot more time from the players, but wouldn't add any value. So that's something we always discuss, which is like the scoping of our challenge and figuring out like, do we want to make 20,000 files in this log file? Probably not. If we have 200 and the one of them is the big one, then that's enough for someone to learn. A lot of times in real world scenarios and real world engagements, you will find yourself bashing your head on the wall a lot more than you would in NCL.
Right. A lot of AI related questions. What is your opinion on AI automation tools in competitions?
We'll use we kind of got a sense of that one.
Yeah, I mean, well, beyond that also, like, use it to help you learn. If you use it to answer questions, you're gonna struggle when it comes to the point that it falls short. But if you start from the beginning asking the AI automation tool to teach you and explain the lines of code to you rather than just solving the challenge, you will be much better equipped to handle the harder challenges that come.
I will also add kind of like part of our internal philosophy when we're thinking about our challenges and how AI might be used to approach them. For a lot of like the easy and some of the medium level challenges, we come in with the expectation that AI probably could help you solve the entirety of the challenge. And if that is what you're going to do, you're just going to copy and paste the question and give it to AI and then post with the answer that it gives you back. You're not going to learn everything. You're also not going to get a massive competitive advantage because everyone else can also do the exact same thing. So like what ends up happening is that, AI might help you with some of those easier level challenges. When you get to those harder level challenges, you're still going to need to have a lot of those skills. And that's where kind of like the competitive aspect still plays into things. And, reiterating what Kiwi mentioned is that if you're using it as a learning resource rather than like hey, go solve everything for me, I recommend using AI automation. Well, I wouldn't recommend using AI automation to like auto solve it for you, but I would recommend using AI as, someone to brainstorm ideas off of, right? So asking it for like explanations for like, how does this work, or like, what are different ways I could solve this, and then go and actually validate what the AI is telling you. Because if you just have it totally automate and you're shutting off your brain, then you're not learning anything, and you're also not getting a competitive advantage, because like I said, everyone else can do the same thing as well.
Yeah, I would say, like, I use it to figure out the vocabulary so I can search and learn about it further, because I might not know like a concept or vocab. So I think it's good for some of those things for sure.
All right, next question. What sections do players typically find the most challenging?
Think web app and E&E with a little bit of forensics.
And then the most headbanging, I think, is password hard.
But it also depends on your experience and who you are. I generally find the E&E and the web app challenges the easiest, and then I struggle really bad on forensics and network traffic analysis. And I feel really foolish at the end when I'm like, oh, that was the solve, really? Don't ask me how long I took today trying to solve our QA challenge. That was a forensics challenge. So I guess generally we see E&E and web app being the hardest, but it also depends on your experience and what you enjoy doing.
Yeah, I guess to add some additional context to this, I think the majority of players that we see in NCL don't have extensive programming experience, and that typically makes the enumeration exploitation and web application categories a little bit harder if you don't have that experience. It becomes very hard to like learn those concepts on the fly in the middle of a competition, versus like something like cryptography. You probably could learn like a specific algorithm or cipher like on the fly, versus like learning how assembly works. So yeah, that's what we see a lot. Any advice for what kinds of jobs are realistic after NCL?
Depends on what you enjoy doing. If you enjoy E&E, look for something in the reverse engineering field, maybe even malware. If you enjoy forensics, then you're looking at digital forensics and incident response. If you enjoy network traffic analysis, you probably want to look at network administration jobs. If you enjoy password cracking, identity and access management, weirdly enough, I've seen a weird correlation there. If you like the web app challenges, then you probably want to do some sort of like web app pen testing job. Off the top of my head, that's what I can like hand you. But again, yeah, it depends on what you enjoy doing and what you're passionate about.
Well, I think the summary there is that anything in cyber, there's a little bit of something for everybody, right? And I think kind of with this question, I think the asterisk is, after completing whatever program you're going through and maybe having some other realistic world experience on there. I've definitely seen some people say, oh, well, NCL really helped me for this in my job out there. So, and most of it is like encountering those things. You're like, oh, I've never heard of that before. Now I have to learn about this thing that I know nothing about, and I'll have to figure out and solve it.
I'd also kind of actually I'd add as well that like it's less that like after NCL, and more of kind of like what are the combination of other skills that you have, and also like what is the kind of like ecosystem like at that point in time. Because I think a lot of people are like, hey, like very interested in doing offensive related cybersecurity roles, and there just are not a whole lot of offensive cybersecurity roles at the entry level, after college. And so you might be really, really good at those skills within NCL, but there might not be a lot of jobs in that area in particular. So I'd also like recommend kind of like looking at what your other resources are outside of just developing skills to help you in your career. So, if you're thinking about like what's realistic, practically speaking, it's going to be a lot of the more defensive related jobs. So SOC analyst, network admin, IM is a big thing, policy, Like a lot of these things are going to be where a majority of the entry level jobs are going to be focused on.
And then to add to that, right? Obviously, I am strong of the opinion that you shouldn't be in this field if you don't have a passion for it. But even if you're here for the money, most blue teaming jobs tend to pay a lot better than red teaming jobs on average, because of the fact that the industry is very saturated in the offensive security world.
Well, I just saw something on the news today that said there was a 40% jump in IT and administration. So, I mean, that sounds like a great thing to do after NCL.
Right, a couple more logistical questions that I'm going to knock through. Can we use custom tools? Yes, you can. I know there are a lot of like players who have done NCL multiple times. They start developing their toolkit. Those are okay. I will just also reiterate that, if you're writing your own tools, that's totally fine. If you're building custom paid tools, then, no. Can you see your percentage, the percentage you fall into, or is it shown at the end? So we do have a live leaderboard going on, like when you in the middle of playing the game, so you can see where you fall within that leaderboard. So you will be able to see it live and at the end. I don't know if you'll necessarily be able to see exactly like the difference between how many people registered versus how many people played when it's live. So that information you'll get at the end. How many competitors are expected for the season competition? I think we typically see, like, it depends on which game you're talking about. I think for individual game, I think we're probably expecting around like somewhere between like 4,000 to 5,000 people participating in an individual game. Right. Do you have a higher chance of being employed or accepted in university, trade school, or etc. if you add this to the resume? Oh, this is this is an interesting one. I'll start with this one. I think that just like any other certification, anything else you put on your resume, it doesn't automatically kind of get you there. I think oftentimes what's more important is to like mention your experience, like describe your experience and what skills you demonstrated on the resume, more than it matters the exact ranking. Because something you'll have to keep in mind is that like any recruiters, well, for one, the school side, I actually don't think they're looking at it at all. So I'm actually starting to answer this more from like the hiring side. But like most of the time they're going to see a lot of resumes that have a lot of different accolades, and then it starts looking very samey for them. And so like talking about your experience ends up becoming a lot more valuable. So I would say like listing your exact ranking or like your performance within NCL probably had like no impact at all for applying for a school. But describing your experience might actually be a lot more valuable there. I don't know if Jen or Kiwi, either of you have anything else to add to that?
I think it would be disingenuous of me to say like, oh yeah, NCL's totally going to get you this XY thing, because like
Harvard University guaranteed.
Right. Like a lot of other people are doing it, number one. And also like, it depends on the experience you gained. Were you somebody who just AI'd everything in the NCL tournament? Or were you actually like, I'm going to learn how to do this challenge and actually sit here and figure it out and understand what each of these things are doing? Like, which one are you?
Yeah, everyone applying to university will have similar levels of accolade across the board. How you can demonstrate your excellence in comparison to your peers who are also applying for university is by verbally in the essays expressing the experience that you gained, what you learned, and how you explored. And then also using this to create connections with people in other schools, right? If you want to go to, I don't know, University of, I picked the hardest one to say, UIUC, right? If you want to go to UIUC, for example, it probably benefits you to make connections with students who are competing in NCL who are at UIUC and ask them like, hey, I'm interested in coming to this university. I'm still a high school student. What can I do to prepare? What did you do? What do the professors like? Can you connect me with a professor, etc.? In terms of trade school and employment, I think that is where we try to pitch our scouting reports, and that's where we see the most success. I just don't think a lot of universities take this into account.
Logistical question. Michael's asking, how often do you guys update the gymnasium challenges? So we typically don't like update the existing challenges once they're in there. We do add additional challenges into the gym. We actually just added one yesterday for enumeration exploitation. Typically we add about like 3 or so challenges per season. Right now is the cadence that we're on. So we just added one yesterday. In the next month, I think we'll have another 2 coming out.
Yeah, and we've also updated all the walkthroughs to reflect some of the updates we've made to the platform. There's something else that was updated as well that I remember changing in the gym, but mostly, not so much the challenges.
Hey, another AI question. With AI tools becoming more powerful, how should players think about rankings? If some competitors rely heavily on AI, how can we gauge our own skill level and know where we truly stand? This is more of like a meta level question.
This is a meta
like this isn't actually about the competition itself. This is
so
like
great about it for an evening night question. In the morning, I could probably handle this.
So from my perspective, I think that we are seeing a shift in security today where people that leverage AI like any other tool are finding success. I think something to consider is that we also have seen, especially in NCL, that people who are overly dependent on AI also tend to struggle in the hardest questions. The hardest challenges tend to give them the hardest level, like they tend to struggle more than anyone else because they did not adapt and they did not build their skills, right? So how can we gauge our own skill level and know where we truly stand? In reality, comparison is the thief of joy. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. The best way that you can actually think about rankings is look at where you ranked last year and look at where you ranked this year. Look at your soft success last year or last season and look at your soft success this season. You look at your accuracy last season, look at your accuracy this season. Compare yourself to yourself. That is probably your best bet at actually gauging your skill level and your growth. There's a chance that somebody competing has built like different MCP servers connected to like Claude and ChatGPT and Perplexity and all of these things, right? And maybe they're like one-shotting and speedrunning the NCL competition, but then when they get into a technical interview and they have to do an in-person and the company flies them out, they'll struggle. They'll struggle to solve like an in-person technical interview, and you might not because you actually spent time learning. So yeah, it adds another level of like opacity to comparison. But in the end, if you compare yourself to yourself, that's where you'll find the most growth.
Actually, I think I have a good way you can gauge your own skill level. If you're out there talking to people and people go to you to learn something, I think that means that you're pretty skilled and, you're an important resource to the community. So I think that's actually a great way to gauge skill level,
Yeah, I'll take a swing on this one, which is I think what, with AI tools here, what they're really doing is I think kind of increasing the skill floor where like a lot of beginners who normally wouldn't be able to solve a challenge can ask AI and AI can help them solve those challenges. I don't think it's necessarily, making it so that everyone is now getting 100% on everything. Obviously, we wouldn't have a competition if that was the case. And so I think it makes it even more important to not compare yourself to others, especially when you're in those early stages of learning. You really want to set your own personal goals there. And then probably the rankings are not going to be super meaningful for a lot of people who are, this is their first season of NCL. This is their first cybersecurity class that they're taking. Those rankings will start becoming more and more meaningful once you kind of get further and further in your progression of developing your skills.
We're chugging through the questions.
Yeah, we are.
Bless you.
Thank you.
How are mistakes handled if it's found out the answers were incorrect? Everyone who tried to gets the point at the end. So, I mean, this happens once in a while. There isn't a we don't handle it the same way necessarily every single time. It's dependent on the specific context. If it's going to be a basic situation of like, hey, there is another answer that is also correct that we did not factor in, then we'll just give everyone credit who made that additional submission for that second answer, and we do retroactive credit. So if you made subsequent submissions, those additional submissions get deleted, and you just get credit for that initial submission. If it's a situation where like the challenge is just kind of like completely broken out right, then we have to figure out like, do we want to give everyone credit? Do we want to eliminate the question? It gets a little bit more complicated, and we have to look at like more of the specific context of what's going on there. But I will say, if it's just like a matter of like, oh, there was another unexpected correct answer that we need to account for, we just go and we count it, and that's typically the case of when an issue arises with the challenge. That's typically the thing that's most common, or it's like a formatting thing, right? We were having issues for a while where like, if you do a single quote or double quote, the Windows double quote or single quote is different than like the Linux double quote or single quote. Like you have the smart quotes, and so like those types of things are really annoying to have to deal with. And then we'll give credit to people that way if it's like a formatting issue like that. Or you have like the hyphen versus the M dash. That's also like another thing. And that might be another way that we see how many people are using AI based on how many M dashes show up in our answer submissions. How has the competition evolved over the years? Anything that was unexpected?
Over the years, that's a you question, Franz.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, how much context do you all have for this one? Okay.
I mean, I guess I've seen a few seasons, but
yeah, I could give my take on this. So, I mean, definitely the adoption of AI has been the most kind of like unexpected and like disruptive thing to how competition works. I don't think it has like fundamentally changed the way that we develop challenges, but it has made us think about like, well, what challenges are we okay with AI being able to solve versus the challenges that we want to be, super difficult that are going to be used for determining like who the top winners are. So we've had to like adapt part of our challenge creation process there. The other thing with AI well, it's not AI specifically, but I've kind of noticed that over time, the kind of like general understanding of different cybersecurity like concepts and topics has been like increasing. I think this is also something that exists with a lot of like video games, is that you'll see like the average skill level of players of a video game will increase over time. Or it's just like how I know IQ test probably isn't the best measurement for this, but like there's documented evidence of like people today have higher IQ levels on average than people from like 20 years ago, because education has improved, nutrition has improved. And I've kind of seen a little bit of that like in our niche here, where like it seems that like the average cybersecurity skill that's being kind of taught and learned in school seems to be going up. I don't think that's necessarily unexpected. I'm glad that it is happening, but it's something that like we've had to account for as well, is that like when it comes to like making difficulty level, it becomes tricky, because do we make challenges harder now because the cybersecurity programs are getting better in school, because that makes it so that it's a little bit harder for people who are still beginners? Like, how do we handle that? And so, the answer to that question is like, we just have to do better segmentation of like, this is supposed to be a gimme challenge that like everyone should be able to solve. Like AI should be able to solve. You're in your first CS 101 class, your cyber 101 class, like you should be able to solve. And then here are more of like the stretch level challenges. But yeah, that's something that we've had to kind of like evolve as overall skill level has changed throughout the industry. Jen, Kiwi, anything to add?
Nothing off the top of my head, no.
I think there's always something new every season, though. That's different. I remember distinctly when I played like a couple years ago, and I came back for the next season. Everybody was in the Discord saying, "Wow, they really upped their game this season. Things seemed like incredibly more difficult than they were like the season before." And I think everybody was kind of expecting like the gym and the competition to be a little more closer together, 1-to-1. But maybe that's kind of what you were describing, Franz, which is like everybody kind of has that base level. And that means for us as challenge developers and, the host of the competition, like we do need to maybe up our game in some areas.
All right, next question. Do any of the challenges go over SIMs or SEAMs, however you want to pronounce that, for log analysis and alert triaging? If not, have you thought about implementing it? I guess this is a little bit of a logistical question as well. So we have our log analysis category where you can use those tools to solve it. You don't have to use those tools to solve it. We've tried to be very kind of like software and vendor agnostic because those tools are always going to change over time. And we don't want to kind of like have everyone learn something that, only a fraction of people are going to have to use on the job, because there's so many of these different tools and not every job is going to use the same tool to solve the problem. So our focus has been on the methodology of like making sure we're teaching you the concepts and, the general idea of how to solve these challenges rather than the particular tool. Another tricky element as well is when it comes to like, these different SIMs, they're not cheap and they don't exactly have a licensing model that makes it particularly easy for us to make those available within the platform to everyone. And so that's where we kind of say, like, if you want to use those tools, like Splunk has a developer license. You can go get a free Splunk developer license and run your logs through Splunk that way. Like you're more than welcome to do that. But in terms of us being able to like provide a Splunk instance to like every single player with an NCL, like that's going to cost more than like the Splunk license is going to cost more than your registration. Like
the only I can think of is like Waza and Blumira. I've heard of those two. But even then, those aren't really like industry. Those aren't used commonly in the industry, as far as I know. I could be wrong. So things are just expensive when it comes to SIEM tools.
I think we've also gotten this question for like cloud as well of like, oh, do you want, and how about we have some challenges where you like configure your AWS environment? And it's like, so AWS doesn't exactly provide us a way to give a sandbox way for people to try like configuration without us just getting billed straight to our credit card. So like, that there become a lot of these like licensing challenges that kind of comes into play when it comes to the software of like, yeah, it would be nice to be able to do that. But unfortunately, like, we try to set that up and then someone just racks up a multi-$1,000 bill and now we're on the hook for it. But, like I said, you're more than welcome to use whatever tools you would like as long as they're, freely available or you use a free trial. So if you want to get practice with a SIM like Splunk or, you can use like Elastic Stack. Those are all like up to the end player to decide how they want to go about doing that. We are coming close to time and 2 questions.
Lots of great questions. I think there's a good one here. We should.
I have one that I want to cover. You go ahead with yours, Jen.
I think this is a good question. What skills should we focus on practicing the most? That's good. We get this question every year. I think that's a good question.
Oh man, there's so many ways to answer this though. Like,
I know.
For what purpose? Like, what is the because if you're wanting to get a career as like a SOC analyst, then I would say, well, focus on the skills that are most relevant to being a SOC analyst. If it's just for like, trying to min-max your score as a whole, then there's a different answer for that.
I think going through the gym could, give you a good opportunity to see what kinds of things you need to practice, like for networking, understanding like how to filter, some of the packets, and for logs, how to, use Linux to filter some of those. Although I know some people use Excel to filter the logs. So whatever your process is, I think getting comfortable in doing that process and whatever your analysis is will help you in the competition. I think that's a good thing to practice, so that way your tools are right at hand. You don't have to worry so much about, oh no, where's this? Where's that? What do I need again? Like you just kind of a little more calm.
Kiwi, do you have a suggestion for this one?
Nothing off the top of my head. I feel like you will learn what skills you need as you go through the competition, and then you'll be able to prepare for the next season. To be honest, if this is your first season, just focus on learning. Do not focus on competing. I really want to hit this next question. Yeah.
All right, there you go. Is there much work for folks interested in malware analysis that isn't government or for antivirus companies?
So Tim, I asked myself that same question like 5-6 years ago. First of all, I'm going to shout out one of our sponsors, CrowdStrike. They do malware reverse engineering and malware analysis as part of their like MDR and XDR provider setups. And then obviously you have other companies similar to CrowdStrike like Mandiant, SentinelOne, Sophos, Talos, which is part of Cisco. And a lot of them publish like details on APTs and crimeware and all of this other stuff. And part of that involves malware reverse engineering. Now, if you want to go to the opposite of government, you can go and look at exploit and like spyware watchdogs. These are your sort of like your Citizen Lab, your Amnesty International Tech, your Access Now, and these groups tend to like analyze mercenary spyware, things made by like NSO Group and like Pegasus, and they oftentimes come out with some of the coolest research and some of the most like detailed findings that you'll ever see from companies. And then you have big tech, right? You have companies like Google and Apple and Microsoft and Meta, because go figure, people will make malware for Android, people will make malware for iOS and Mac devices, people will make malware for Windows computers, and one of Microsoft's offerings is Windows Defender. So all of those companies will have malware analyst jobs, but they won't be called malware analysts, right? They're going to be wrapped into broader security roles that encompass a lot more things. And you'll see roles like security engineer or threat researcher or detection engineer, rather than purely malware analyst. Beyond that, you have some small security consultancy companies, and then you have like nonprofits and like civil society organizations, and those tend to be also very rare in terms of roles. I think that's all, besides like financial sector roles as well, but that is another rant. We're low on time, so I tried to go really quickly. I hope that answered your question. I just gave you a bunch of companies to look at and a bunch of things to consider. Jen, Franz, anything from your end?
I don't have anything. This is not my area.
And it's just about the end. So I think it's time for us to kind of wrap it up too, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. We are at time. I will put up one final shout out here if I can find the banner. If you have additional questions, you can join our community Discord. The link to join is in the chat. I wish we had a shorter URL for that. But it's a great place to go for you if you got general questions, you want advice. We're there. A lot of people in the community are there as well. It's a great way to get general advice and pointers. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And we look forward to seeing you in the games. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.